friend gave me this beautiful old sweater to fix. And it's a sweater restoration more than a mending job. So it may end up being a series of videos, but I thought we could spend some time together today and I can show you what I've done on it so far, as well as some work that still needs to be done and how I'm planning to do it, and then spend a little bit of time actually doing some of it. So I've marked any areas that need attention with bobby pins. Some people do this with safety pins, but I don't have enough of those, so bobby pins works good. I'll go through maybe and show you what I've already done first. The reason that she gave it to me was there was a really large hole both on the front and the back, and I think most of this is moth damage. So we dealt with the moths by putting it in the deep freeze, so -20 or below usually will kill moths. And I believe it is 48 hours, but I left it there for a week just to be sure. And then when I'm finished with it, I'll wash it in a Eucalyptus wash just to be sure, but I haven't seen any further damage, and I've had it in a bag after freezing it for a good month or so. So this area back here had a really large hole, and it didn't seem like something I could reconstruct. So I ended up cutting some shapes out of wool felt and then attaching them with a wool yarn. And that's just there so I can show you. So if you can see the back of it. So these were the holes that were there, and I did put some, I just stitched around each of the hole to make sure it didn't keep unraveling. So I gathered each of the stitches and then did a little bit of structuring stitch work through there. This one I was able to close entirely, but I still covered it. And I really like how those have turned out. It took me a while to figure out what motif to use, but I like it. This is just a stain, it's just dirt, it needs to be cleaned. That'll be taken care of when I do the Eucalyptus wash. I'll just give that a bit of extra attention. I had to do quite a bit of restructuring through the neckline here, especially where it attaches at the shoulders. You can't really see it at this point, but I used mostly navy blue sewing thread, like a polyester sewing thread. You can see maybe see here. It's just all the stitches had just kind of gotten stretched out and didn't have enough structure to hold it. Someone has previously used a purple cotton yarn, like dishcloth cotton, to stitch things back together. And we'll see that throughout the sweater. Where that's been done, I'm not removing it. Along the bottom of the sweater here, the ribbing is coming undone in multiple places. And you can see this is the purple yarn I was talking about. Same over here. And they've essentially re-seamed it with that purple cotton yarn all the way up the side. I could take that apart and redo it, but it's holding, so I'm just going to leave it. And then again here, see, the edge is frayed and coming apart all the way along. There was another large hole here that I've reconstructed the best I could with what's called a Swiss darning method. I didn't have the original yarn, so you can still see it because the color is slightly different. This more magenta purple, it's still 100% wool yarn, so it should behave roughly similar and require similar care to this piece. But I've just gone over and created stitches here where there were none. And on the edges of the hole, where I felt like the stitches might come out later, I went over them to reinforce with the stitches. So I'm pretty happy with how that turned out, and even though it's in the front, I don't think it requires any further care. Moving on down the sweater. Here you can see that something, probably this navy blue yarn, has come unattached, and we have these loops, these knit loops that are just free floating. So that will continue to run all the way down unless we attach that. probably what I'll do is I'll grab a crochet hook and I'll just hook this through and run it up to pick up all those stitches that have already run. And then I'll attach it in the back. And you won't even see that that's there. Over on this side, there's a few instances of moth eating, which will become holes. You can see it's just kind of deteriorated and unattached. So I'll use that Swiss darning method again, go over it, and then over this stitch and into the back, and then attach it to the sides as well. Same with this one here. There's another one doing the same thing. And this blue guy here. This blue one may just be an end that's pulled through the front, which if it is, that's an easy fix, so just pull it through to the back. But based on what I've seen with the rest of the sweater, I'm concerned that it's not just an end and it will unravel in the future. I think I just tagged this underarm just to show you how much wear some of these joins are getting. I may go through and reinforce that a bit because that will be a hole in future, but I haven't quite decided yet. Depends how much steam I have, I think, when I'm done the others. On to the arms. Here we have another instance where the yarn has broken or been eaten and it's left a hole where there's no stitching there. Again, that'll be a Swiss darning reinforcement. And this looks like a stitch that nothing's going through. See this blue, these two blue yarns have split. That'll need to be dealt with. And this cuff, this one's not in too bad a shape. The one on the other side was just completely disintegrated. There were just holes everywhere and whole sections of it just gone. This side, you can tell that someone has folded the cuff back, probably because they wanted it to be shorter and smaller. Has a bit of dust in there too, fluff. And then sewed it down. That's not in too bad a shape, but because I've had to reconstruct the other side, I likely will reconstruct this side as well. This is the sleeve that was completely deteriorated. It had holes all the way up into here, and I've taken a good portion of sleeve out. I don't have it with me, but it's probably that much that I cut off. Just, it was not repairable. This has been repaired with that cotton dishcloth yarn a few times, just kind of stitched all throughout. I did my best to reconstruct a bit with the color theme, but the stitches are so far gone, but still present. It was just really, I couldn't use the Swiss darning method because of how haphazard everything was already. So I cut that off and then picked up the stitches, and I'm now re-knitting the cuff with a navy blue wool yarn. Just going to turn it inside out. This is that raw edge. So I picked up stitches pretty far back from the edge because I don't want it to unravel, and because in some areas there's really still nothing there. So some of that dishcloth cotton, some random ends. So it looks quite thick on this side, but to pick up, that was the furthest forward row that I could pick up. I may cut this off, but I think what I'm actually going to do is just attach it, kind of blend it into the sleeve when I'm finished the sleeve so that you don't notice it when you're wearing it. And because I know that my friend wants a shorter sleeve and a bit smaller of a sleeve, I'm re-knitting the cuff. So I picked up the same number of stitches that I had here, and then I'm using a ribbing, which is a bit springy, so it gives you a bit of a tighter fit around your wrist. And then I'm decreasing stitches here until I get to a cuff that will be comfortable to wear, but will still hold your wrist and keep the cold out. So let's do some work. Starting with this section here on the arm. Take some purple yarn. I don't want to do this from the back. I want to do it from the front because I want to be able to see what it's going to look like. So first thing I have to do is inspect it and figure out how many stitches we're missing. So I see a row here, it's blue, looks lovely. Then there's another row here, it goes blue, purple, blue, blue. This is a bit stretched out, but it's still attached. Moving up from that, this is where we lose the row. So here's blue, purple. This should have been purple. And now it's moved back to blue. There's that stretched out stitch. There's a piece of another stitch. And now we're reconnecting to blue. So I think we are missing 2 purple stitches through here. So I'm going to come at it from the side, underneath the purple V from the stitch beside it. And I'll do another video on this method of darning so that you can see better how I'm doing this. And I'm going to go up through the next stitch where that V should have been. And I'm just going to retrace another few stitches over here to help anchor it, and because some of this fabric was falling apart and getting kind of thin. And I don't want that to be another hole. You know, 3 weeks after I give it back to her. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to grab a crochet hook and we'll weave in those ends. I found my hook. I'm just going to pull the ends towards the back of the work and then turn it inside out. And I've woven it far enough back that I'm not counting on weaving these ends in to hold the whole together. It's really just to keep them out of the way and keep them from, whoa, there we go, that was a long end. Keep them from unraveling over time. Weaving them into the wool. And I find if I change direction a few times, that helps it stay attached and not unravel later. There's one. Once I've got it far enough in, I just trim the ends. Be careful when you're weaving in ends that you stay on the back of the work. If you pull it all the way through, it'll be fine, but you'll see it on the other side. There we are. These stitches are all going thin, so I'm going to go over them with the turquoise yarn. Again, to avoid further holes later on. I'm going to come at it along the side of the stitch just below. You could also do just above the stitch that needs reinforcing. Pull the yarn through. Go underneath. And I'm essentially just retracing the stitch. So where this turquoise goes up and under the navy, I'm gonna follow that yarn. And then it comes back down and through the purple. And into the next stitch, where it goes up, around, through the purple, and back down again where it started, and then through the next one. Now we have what appear to be new stitches, but with a slightly different color of turquoise yarn. It's a little bit more sea foam and a bit less turquoise. I'm going to go back through and do one more row just where this stitch is. Sometimes it takes a second to figure out where the stitches are and where the yarn is going when the fabric's a bit stretched out. Okay. Pretty happy with how that section has turned out. It is looking. This is still a little bit not great, so I'm going to go over one more and redo that section as well. Okay. We now have a fabric that feels similar to the fabric down here that hasn't been damaged. Instead of being all stretched out, That's most of the sections done, except for the ribbing along the bottom, which I haven't quite decided how I want to reconstruct that yet. But that'll be a big job, probably a whole video on its own. So stay tuned for sweater part 2.